Okay, the Brazos County Commissioner will meet in a workshop session, June 4th, 2024, 2 p.m., County Administration Building, 200 South Texas Avenue. First item on the agenda is call to order. Second is presentation and discussion of the FY 24-25 county budget regarding the following items: cost of living adjustment and merit allocation and merit policy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Court, and County Judge. It is that time of year to start discussing what the budget's going to look like for this next year. The first discussion will be regarding the cost of living. But before we start looking at the cost of living amounts, I kind of like to go over what we did last year. Last year, Katie and I presented the living wage calculation for Texas to take a look to see what our lowest paid wage was versus the living wage for the U.S. as well as the Brazos County area. Last year, what you're looking at is on the screen. The living wage USA was at $16.79. Our lowest wage for Brazos County was $13.78. The Commissioners Court approved a budget of increasing the lowest wage to come above what the living wage of the USA to $17.56 to help hopefully keep that increase above this year. That increase for certain positions was about 27.5% increase. That's including COLA, in that matter. Along with that increase, we wanted to make sure that Brazos County does not hire anybody below the living wage last year. So we deleted groups 1 through 10 on our group and step chart. So now they're not able to come in below a living wage. For this year, it doesn't look great. So for 23-24, the information that I pulled from the living wage for the states as well as for our area went up from $16.79 to $20.92 for the U.S. For Brazos County, it went to $19.32. That's a 10% difference from what our lowest wage is paid here at Brazos County, which was $17.56. A little scary. It was kind of, I didn't realize this was going to happen. I thought we were going to be above the mark last year for increasing our lowest wage, but this shocked me a little bit. Before I move on, do you have any questions regarding this portion of the living wage calculations? And of course, we only go off the one adult, 0 children, because we have no clue if there's additional family members, children. But I wanted to compare what the U.S. was doing as well as what Brazos County was doing so we can have some sort of comparison.
How many positions do we have that fall into the category of being below?
A lot. You could say about, I counted the other day, it was about 54. Out of the 1,007.
It was 27 the year before when we did
So now we're
adjustment.
Yes, and now we're getting into the clerk 1s,
Okay.
the clerk 2s, the clerk 3s. This means our custodians are still underpaid compared to the living wage.
Right.
Our facility services, not facility services, our expo attendants.
Okay. But we don't have a number.
Not a number off the top of my head, but I can give that to you. We'll have it to you before this is over.
Yeah, because I'd like to see it as a number of people, and in order to accomplish at least the 0 children category.
Yes. And this
I'd like to see that as a budget number, total number, like we're talking about.
We can give you a total number.
The total number that we're talking about when we look at the spectrum of salary increases, like on this sheet.
I could give that to you. The calculations would not be during this meeting, but I can give that to you in the next 24 hours. So what we also have to keep in mind that if those certain positions increase, now we're to the point to where it's a snowball effect. That means we have to start looking at our clerk 1s, clerk 2s, clerk 3s. All of the other positions are in that range because now you're all matching. We should have some sort of hierarchy, right? And so that will have to also be considered. But we could definitely get that information.
Yeah.
This next sheet is going to be what Katie and I presented last year. This is going to be the weighted average for the 5 years for Social Security income, this consumer index, as well as the cost of living wages for the last 5 years. For the supplemental security income, the weighted average is 4.8. The consumer price index is 4.8. Brazos County is 4.3. Last year, we did the cost of living increase as of 4.5, which matched what last year's average was for supplemental security as well as consumer price index. The next is going to be a bar graph. This is not weighted. This is going to be the actual cost of living. I do want to show you before I came, I wanted to do a trend line. This, hopefully I can blow it up a little bit bigger. This bottom line will be Brazos County as a trend line. The next line is, I believe, is going to be the CPI, and the top line is going to be Social Security. I kind of wanted to compare what the trend is moving forward as well as what we have in the past. Hopefully, starting this next year, you can kind of start seeing us flatten out if we're going to continue going with the CPI as well as the Social Security index. Of course, this line right here is going to be Brazos County at the moment.
And this does not include merit?
This does not include merit. So I think I wanted me to come to the table with a recommendation. I have 2 recommendations based on the facts that I'm gathering between HR and I. So based on the CPI, it looks like a 4.8, between a 4.3, 4.85. If we do a 5% cost of living to kind of level everything out, this will bring everybody up 5%. I suggest to include that with the merit. What we're seeing in a lot of our positions regarding the merit, they're becoming to get skewed, and so it's harder for some positions to move to different departments, as well as positions are being maxed out. Remember, we only have 20 steps in one group, and we're not able to have more steps. Our systems are not able to handle more space because each space contains a lot of memory in the systems. Based on that, I think HR and I have talked about going out for, I want to bring Jennifer up because this is going to be her expertise, a classification and compensation study next year to review every single position in this county to see where we're at. And Jennifer can explain a little bit more background on this aspect of it.
To answer your prior question, Commissioner, we just ran a report. We have 84 employees based on current actual pay rates under the living wage rate of $19.32.
So we had 27, we made the increases to adjust for that on those specific categories of employees, and now it's 84 that are under. Now that is under the 1 adult, 0 children.
Living wage for Brazos County at $19.32 an hour. Correct. These are filled positions based on current rates, not budgets.
Okay. And these are actual salary, they don't include benefits,
That's
which
correct.
is an additional 25%.
Ish.
Okay.
And I believe that count also includes part-time, full-time,
Yes.
and three-quarter time.
Yes.
So
Okay.
Just not election workers.
Okay.
We removed
What-
election workers.
Okay, what is it for full-time?
Give us a little bit and we'll run a report for you.
Ray?
I can't hear you.
Give us a little bit, we'll run a report to separate that number out by full-time, temp, part-time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because the distinction there is benefits, no benefits, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so,
Steve, talk into the mic, please.
okay, here, let me. So what we're talking about is our part-times, there is no benefits included in their compensation. And our
Right.
full-time people, we're talking about benefits included in their compensation.
Correct.
On a cost of living, living wage calculation, where is that shown here? Are the numbers for the Living Wage USA and Living Wage Brazos County that are calculated and represented here, do those include with or without benefits?
No, because I don't know what benefits they take.
Okay.
I personally don't. Their HR is able to see, especially for full-time, if they take benefits, but we budget 100% for all full-time positions, even if they do not take benefits we offer.
Okay, let me make sure I understand that. The benefits that are voluntary that we offer are health care for employees. And I guess you can opt out of TCDRS. Those are the two biggies. You can't opt out of TCDRS. Okay, so what is the other optional benefit we're talking about here that people can opt out of?
Health insurance.
They can opt out of dental, they can opt out of.
Okay, but we don't pay anything. We don't pay anything. I mean,
You gotta talk in the mic.
Got it.
what I'm looking for is what we actually compensate our employees that's available to them, whether they choose to take it or not. And the only one that they can choose not to take, that we actually make a payment for on their behalf,
Medical.
is health insurance.
Yep, just medical.
Okay. Maybe in our calculation of these people who are impacted here that are our employees, maybe we should look into part-time, full-time, no health care benefit in part-time, health care benefit in full-time. Because I think there's an appropriate adjustment there to make into that. Like I say, I appreciate these numbers where the living wages come from and all of those things. But at the same time, I want to have, as much as is practical, a apples to apples comparison for what this really means for Brazos County and what this really means in the United States. Does that make sense?
For the United States, we could try to get that information.
I'd be
Based
more
on
interested.
information.
I'd be good with
But
just
for
Brazos County. Okay.
We can see what is held in our Brazos County regarding our 1,007 employees.
Well, I certainly don't want to, I don't want to have a situation where we're not able to employ people for positions based on what the compensation plus benefits are. Do we have any data that's relative to that you can bring to us?
Probably during budget time, but today we're talking about cost of living as well as, I know it ties two together. We have Insurance USI coming in July. They're going to give us an update on that. We'll also discuss retirement at a later date, along August and stuff. But today, in order for us to prepare for the budget workshops and budget meetings, we need to see what the court would like to do for cost of living, because that is one of the major costs that will go into the Assure's budget.
Well, I realize, thank you for indulging me. I realize I ask way too many questions because
No,
I
you're
want to know,
good.
I want to know the details. For me, at least, it's important that I know all that so I can make a good decision. Thank you.
I would like Jennifer to go into a little bit detail regarding the compensation and classification study, because I kind of would like to weigh the options regarding merit award this next year, and so I kind of like to see y'all's thoughts on that as well.
So, the classification and compensation study. and how we envision it is for an outside party to come in and do an objective review out of all of our positions. Look at our pay structure, look at our pay groups, look at our positions, review our job descriptions. One, make sure all our job descriptions are up to date and in compliance with FLSA. We just got the new FLSA rule recently that's going to go into effect over the next few months. So making sure we're all in compliance there, which we are. Beyond that, making sure that we have standardization of titles and duties, and then equivalent pay equity with that as well. One of the other things we wanted added to the classification compensation study is to add on a benefits survey. We did have USI conduct a benefits benchmark over the last year, but something a little more detailed is what we're looking for at this point. Does that make sense?
I like decisions based on data.
And that's what we want, because it's hard for her office as well as my office to try to gather all this information for each position along with regular duties. And I think someone having a different opinion on our setup can also help us create something that's not really on a group and step, something that's more of a range, so we're able to move employees around in different departments on the same pay structure. It's hard now because they're based on steps, and the new position might not have the steps in order to compensate that employee. And so this will give us new ideas.
Yeah, well, I know that's something that we put out there last year's budget for our largest department or group, and that was for the SO. And, giving people the ability to be able to have control within their organization, I think has a lot of merit to it.
It does.
Are we going to get some feedback results on how that all worked out with the idea? Because at the time I thought it was a great idea, but would like to get some feedback on where we are relative to that.
Definitely, I have talked to Lieutenant House in the Sheriff's Office to try to put something together for the future, during the budget workshops as well. I know I pulled the last HCM report into my system, the budgeting system. As of May 22nd, it looked like all deputy positions were filled. I kind of skewed off and could not look at the jailers, but I noticed the deputies were all filled during that time. And of course, my information's a delayed information. It's not up to date. And so I don't get that information after that.
When you say deputy, you're talking about patrol division?
They're all called deputies. So
But you're talking about the patrol division, or is the jail administration division in that?
this is just the Sheriff's Office administration, just the patrol deputies.
Okay.
Which includes, they used to have civil, they used to have animal control, but now they're all called deputies. That way they could all move into the different aspects of their office.
Gotcha. So the unfilled positions still lie on the jail administration side, or the jail, the officers themselves, the detention officers.
The detention officers, I know
themselves.
I did look at it, and it looked like it was less, there were more positions filled currently than was last year, but that was based on May 22nd, not at today's rate.
Well, I'd just kind of like to get an overview of how that idea played out. I think it was a good idea, and I hope it was a good idea, but I'd like some feedback on between you and and HR and from the SO, how that all works, and maybe if there's some tweaking or some thoughts that need to be done as well, where we need to go, what our next steps are.
I think it is, and it taken it under the wing last year of the unknown, not knowing how this was going to turn out. It did take several months, and so bringing somebody outside in to help us do countywide would be great.
I have a question, but it may be a Jennifer question. Something she said about doing an assessment of all of the countywide positions and the job description. So are you talking about, you're proposing that we have an outside entity review what you're doing to make that assessment?
The outside entity would actually conduct the assessment.
Right.
Some of that means meeting with the individual employees. If we want to highlight certain positions that we tend to have maybe issues with, like our admin assistant, admin secretary type grouping that's kind of all over the place within their pay groups.
Right.
Being able to come in and evaluate those.
So will this assessment, you've talked about that we can no longer, the step process it's expanded as far as it will go. So if we don't use a step process, are we looking at career ladders for the county?
Potentially, and that's what we're gonna ask them to kind of give us some guidance on what they recommend. Do they want pay bands? Do they want ranges? Do they want,
So you're
what do
you're
they
polling
think?
the employees?
Polling, no, we're not polling the employees. We'd be asking the consultant
The
for their
consultant, okay,
recommendation on how our
How
future
best to
pay
do it.
structure should
Yeah,
go.
okay,
Yes,
okay.
exactly. While making sure that we maintain internal equity and making sure that we're competitive within the market.
Maintain internal equity and what?
Making sure that we're competitive in the market.
Competitive, okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's kind of
Thank-
I really think that would be good because it's kind of somewhat of an enigma from my perspective is I know that we have a very large number of funded vacant positions in Brazos County. And I get information talking with people about how that impacts our employees because they're having to do more because the positions are not filled. But I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I don't hear out from outside in the public that there is a significant concern being expressed that needs they're not saying, hey, I can't get what I need to get done with Brazos County done. I don't hear that. Maybe I'm just missing that, but it's kind of a strange paradigm there. The enigma is we have maybe 10% unfilled positions. If the numbers were running around right, and I understand and I hear that is a concern for our employees because they're being asked to do more because the positions aren't full. But I don't hear from the community at large that there are significant issues with not being able to get done what people need to get done relative to their interaction with Brazos County.
So, Commissioner, I think what I hear, what I'm aware of is local government in terms of whether it's us or whether it's the cities, sometimes people get frustrated with lack of potential services that they think, because, there's also that dynamic of what is county and what is city. I sometimes hear people express frustration with perceived lack of what they think the county does. They may not understand how each department operates and what each department, in terms of what resources each department can provide to them as citizens. So some of the lack of discussion may come from not understanding where to go for that service. And so sometimes they just express frustration with what they perceive as lack of government serving them. And so it's a matter of where do I go? Do I go to the county or do I go to the city? And that's the confusion. And so if we're able to up our game such that the county is being responsive, it may not come to us in terms of frustration on perceived lack of service. And so that may be why you're not hearing, oh, the county doesn't do this, because I find there is confusion on what the county does in terms of that service, and so making that distinction. But I think anything that we can do to up our game as a representative of the county and serving the county, we want to be sure that we have in place, whether it is the number of employees or that we refine and improve the system in terms of what we are able to do.
Or you just have exceptional employees and we get the job done.
Right. But if we also, but what we don't want to.
The latter I have no doubt about.
But what we
I
don't
have
want to.
personal experience with those folks. And Commissioner, I agree with you completely, because if there's one form of local government that's least understood between cities, school districts, municipal utility districts, or whatever, the one that's most misunderstood or that people have no identity with what they actually do, it's county government.
I think we're maybe varying a little bit from the agenda of
Right.
COLA and merit.
But let me just say, what we don't want to do is overwork our employees,
No.
however we do this.
And-
Thank you.
And
thank you,
please, if there was anything that I
Bruce.
said that didn't say, that suggested that, I think I tried to make it very clear that it's a concern for our employees because what they have to do, but I don't see a concern from the public.
Going off of that, I know there was a question around the percentage of vacancies compared to how many positions we have. Spencer ran the numbers and it was 10.82%. So I think that's pretty good, but we still have a while to go if we're going to make
Yeah.
100%. And that's what we may have to make sure in our budgets, we budget 100% just in case.
Well, is that trend or just data for today? Or just data for now?
That's actuals as of today.
Okay. I'd really be interested in seeing where we are trend-wise.
So,
Because one of the things that we do is we have a tendency to overestimate our expenditures and underestimate our revenues. And consequently, that's why we have $105 million even after a 25% budget or revenue. I mean,
Commitment, Katie said.
one thing we can tell you vacancy-wise, for FY '23, on average, our vacancies were about 170. That does include CSCD and health district numbers because we didn't have the ability to split those numbers out historically. Currently, to date for FY '24, we're averaging about 149 vacancies per month. So our trend is getting better, but it's a very limited data set at this
I'd
point.
just like to look, if we could go back without too much trouble, take a look at where we are trend-wise, because I think it's a basic adjustment that we need to think about, because over the last 10 years, we don't spend any more than 90% of what we budget
For
to
salaries?
spend, and we underestimate our revenue as well, and that leads to us taking more money out of people's pockets than we need or spend.
When it comes to
I'm
salary
I'm
and
sure we're going to
benefits-
find a way to spend it, don't worry about that. I'm not worried about that, but that's something we need to, I think, make an adjustment with our taxpayers at least. There are other fees and other things that come in, but our property taxpayers, I think we at least need to address that for them.
When it comes to salary and benefits, we do have to budget 100%. We do, in the bigger departments, for instance, jail and the sheriff's office, their budget can handle 0 funded positions. And so we do unfund certain positions. They can hire, but those positions are unfunded.
Right.
Smaller departments, the county auditor will not cut them a paycheck if there's no money. And so that's why we have to budget 100% on those positions.
Somehow I don't find that surprising.
And so her team's already running, numbers for every single payroll to see if we're going to have to move money around for some of the smaller departments regarding comp time and overtime.
You bet.
Going
Well,
back to,
thanks.
go ahead.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So going back to the cost of living estimates. You'll see the salary and wages. This is what was budgeted in salary and wages for FY 2023. This is also including merit that was awarded as well. Below is going to be benefits. This does not include health insurance costs because it's just a one-time cost, right? If you get a raise, it doesn't increase, decrease. For a 1% cost of living, it will be an estimated cost of $740,000. 2%, $1.4 million. 3%, $2.2 million. 3.5%, $2.5. 4%, $2.9. 4.5%, $3.3. And 5%, $3.7. I ran it all the way up to 7%. A 7% just to have 5.1. This is regarding the positions that were established as of FY '23, October 1. This doesn't include any new positions that we create, like the emergency for the roving bailiff, that kind of thing. That will be
this-
included in next year's budget.
Okay, and from prior years, our trend on our historical is 1% merit.
Correct. Last year, it was a 1.5% merit.
Okay.
Our historic trend has been 1%.
Okay.
Now, going back to what Jennifer was talking, go ahead.
It's easier to do the numbers that way. So if we're talking about 3% or 4%, we're really talking about numbers impact to the budget once you throw merit in there of 4% or 5%.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And so going off having a classification and compensation study, I highly recommend, and there's two options. We could get, you could give COLA and merit, two separate awards, or you could do a COLA that's a little higher to include merit. That way every single position could receive both. When it comes to merit, you can have a position to get up additional 5%. We have positions, like I stated, that are maxed out. They're not able to receive a merit at this moment. I have requests that are sitting on my desk that are asking for those positions to be reclassified because there's no longer room to grow. Based on reclassification on that position to move to a different group, you're supposed to have new duties, right? If duties have not changed, that position should cap out at a certain point. And we're getting to that position. And so that's why we would like to continue with the classification and comp study so we can see where we're at for the future. We might have positions that are capped out. We might have positions that need to increase. But it would be someone outside in to look in.
But if somebody's capped out, that is not their cost of living adjustment.
So if they're capped out,
It's
they would
just
still
their
have a cost.
merit.
It's just their merit. So if they're capped out,
Okay, so we're only considering 1% relative to somebody being capped out, correct?
so the merit is on top of the cost of living.
Right. So everybody that is, quote, you could be capped out for merit, but you still get the cost of living adjustment.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, the scale moves. I threw out all my data, and I will get additional data to, shows who go on. What is the court thinking? Because I need some sort of feedback.
I think we do away with the merit and we go with a COLA that would be justified. I'd like to throw out 6% because we gave 4.5% last year COLA and 1.5% merit, so together that's 6%. I think that's fair. Prices are still going up and we have a lot of employees that are hurting.
Can you put that graph of the trend up there again?
Oh, the trend one?
The trend analysis, yep. Yeah,
You could probably see it better on your screen.
yeah.
So this bottom line is going
Well,
to be
it's
Brazos
just kinda-
County.
It's not very bold, but I mean, okay, so where would our trend line be next year, just extrapolating that?
Oh, I cannot see it.
Just looking at the graph there, just kind of draw
So
it out
I'm just
another
going to
year.
type in.
Yeah. Would we be above, I guess the question I'm asking
We would
is,
be
at
above.
what points would we be above, where would we be above trend, where would we be at trend, and where would we be below trend for each of the cost of living adjustments that we have listed here?
Oh, that would take me a while to gather that information.
Yeah, I figured so. And I guess the question I have is, I mean, I can justify us being at trend.
At turn would be along the lines of 4%, just like the graph showed, the CPI, between
Okay.
4.3 and 4.8.
As opposed to 6 that's been suggested.
But then would you want to give award merit? Because that can essentially.
I think the suggestion was to do, didn't you say, Commissioner Berry, to do away with merit?
Yeah, and
And
do
just
with the
make it
COLA.
all cost of living?
Yeah.
But that'd be 6%?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see if
That way, you're not getting people maxed out in the groups, so that, because people have used merit to get people to a higher salary, and I think a 6% raise would be sufficient to meet those requirements.
Let me see if I can move it over.
So if we're, okay, I'm just kind of looking at extrapolations and curve fitting.
I don't know why there's
And
a
we know the
line.
county
What that
does
would be,
not,
because we're-
is a high-wage employer.
See, here's something you have to think
But we're definitely
about.
a high benefits employer.
Yes,
We're certainly a high benefits employer.
we are.
So SSI is a calendar year, January through December, so that's when people receive their COLAs.
Right.
Our CPI is going to be ranged from May through April.
Okay.
When we award merit, it's from October through September. And so I try to look at the averages regarding when merit hit and the increases hit. And so you either have to pick one way to show data and stick with it. And so I'm sticking with what we had presented last year. But we do have to
Sure.
keep in mind that Social Security starts in January. So when people are receiving merit for Brazos County here in October,
Right.
Social Security is already thinking about what they're going to award for 25. And
Right.
so we're either a step behind or a step ahead, depending on which way you look at it.
Well, okay, so if you would go back, you do have an extrapolation out there now?
No.
Okay.
Regarding for the future, no.
Okay, that goes out to 25. The yellow line then reflects what now, as you have it on the graph now?
It's going to be Brazos County turn if we do 6%.
Okay.
I can't tell you what SSI is going to do next year.
So we would be, but realistically, looking at the trend, we're significantly above the trend at 6%.
Looking at the average for SSI, I can do an average. What is it? 4%?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to go to adjust this if we're below trend to trend.
I could do that, but it's hard for me to see.
I mean, 5% on the short end of the yield curve is still
Yeah.
out there, and all the conversations about decreasing the rate, the federal funds rate, are all, nope, not going to happen
And it's all over the board.
until we get better numbers on consumer price index, producer price index,
I can
and
get that
the-
information.
and the deflator. Yeah. Personally, for me, if we were to do 6%, I would do, for me personally and for my position, I would do what I did a couple of years ago when we did the 7.5%. I would refuse to take it. I would find some way to give that back to the county.
Okay, so the goal for today is I will get the information on what the court feels like. So if it's a 6% or 4%, I kind of need a smile or something. So, because next Tuesday I'm going to have an agenda item, just like we have done in the past 2 years, to adopt a COLA for FY 2025, so I can input that in the system so I can get an amount, right? That way, when I start meeting with the department heads June 11th, they can have in front of them the cost of living. If the court decides to award a merit, I'm going to have to give them a deadline within the next couple of weeks to submit those merit awards to us so we can have that in the budget. Keep in mind that if we do award merit, some of those positions receive above the COLA plus additional 5% because they could receive 2 steps or up to 5%, which is costing, in the long run, more money than just a regular COLA.
Typically, the trend on property tax revenue for new structures that add
2.6.
to where we are, we range anywhere from 2 million to 3 million, depending
Estimate.
upon the tax rate that we set,
Right now, 2.6.
2.6 million. And I think conservatively, how we ought to approach this, and this is the way that McLennan County's done this for 5 years. McLennan County has adopted the no new revenue rate for 5 years in a row. And the way they do it is they allow growth to pay for growth. And I think if we exceed what our growth is, 2.2 million up to, our growth will pay for, depending upon the tax rate that we use, somewhere between 3% and 4%, right?
Yes, sir?
3.5% would be in the middle. We talked about this last year, but we didn't follow through on it. But if we target being able to let growth pay for growth and no new revenue being the target tax rate that we want to try to deal with our property taxpayers, then I
I mean,
don't-
we're talking
I don't
about
think- I don't think it makes- I don't-
COLAs
I don't
and
think it-
merit
We're
today,
talking about
not
COLA and merit.
tax rates, so.
No, okay.
Yeah.
It's all in a context, Judge. I apologize. But what I'm talking about is if, are we going to target the no new revenue rate as an objective? Or are we going to just go ahead and build things on and then have to figure out what we need to do? I think it's prudent and I think it's fair to look at a cost of living adjustment that is relative to our new property tax revenue that's going to come in.
I can tell you this, going back on, just to answer just something regarding the property tax. Based on unfunded mandates and the inmate population, the sheriff's office has requested 22 positions based on growth. So keep that in mind. I have Spencer looking at the inmate population for the last couple of years, as well as the growth in Brazos County population, to see if we could predict how many positions we're going to have to add to the sheriff's jail due to unfunded mandate because of the ratios.
So this is just without any consideration for new positions
This is
whatsoever.
not including new
in-
positions.
in
Right
building-
now-
In building this budget.
Right now that I have requested, there's 56 positions being requested, almost $9 million.
Well, I guess the question is what's more of a priority?
I have my priorities.
Positions, well, but I mean, that's for us to decide.
Right.
For us to
And I will
decide
present that.
whether the priority is positions or whether the priority is pay, and that's our job.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that establishing up front an amount, even in light of what I'm hearing, that we have more positions than have ever been added to Brazos County, significantly more.
Oh, I didn't state they were going to be added.
Okay,
Those have been
but
requested.
being requested.
We're still in the beginning of the budget, and so for me to give,
Well, I understand with their jail population that has to be addressed. Okay, I understand that that's what we need to do. In other positions, I'm sure that they're gonna show merit as to why or why not, what we lose if we don't do it, what we get if we do it. But I don't think it's prudent for us to set a COLA that exceeds what we anticipate receiving in additional revenue.
okay,
We can always come back to this and we can say, okay, that's too low, but we weigh that off with new position requests versus whether we go out to 6%. You know, roughly the difference between 3% and 6% is $2.2 million. So I would feel comfortable in looking at the graph as far as the data and cost of living and the fact that we've got new positions that we're going to have to be making decisions about. If we were to start at a baseline that is equal to what our new revenue is anticipated to be, and also if that does not get us below the trend line between Social Security and the numbers that you've put up here, I think that's a prudent place to start, and then we can make adjustments later on if we want to add more to it.
So right now, based on the-
my suggestion would be
on the-
3%.
on the revenues, okay, 3%, write that down. We get our estimates June 25th. Oh, July 25th, excuse me. I have to start budget workshops in order to have the proposed budget at the end of August. To recalculate the calculations, that's a little short time, and so having some sort of amount for cost of living, or if the court would like to award merit, are in the game, so we can see what that cost is. It's a lot easier beforehand, as well as trying to take care of the employees that are here currently, trying to do a good job. I just kind of need to know which direction the court would like to go. That way I can have a number to put into the system. And I can run the numbers between, according, 3% it's in there, 2.2, 6% it's 4.4. But I like to have something on the agenda so we could move forward with explaining to the departments what the expectation is for next year so they can kind of have an idea. It's the biggest part of our budget.
Well, hey, we're sitting on $105 million that we have pure, complete discretion with relative to our budget anyway and fund balance, unrestricted. What's the actual term this time that we've identified it?
Uncommitted.
Uncommitted, unreserved, unrestricted, no commitments to
No
anything.
strings attached.
$105 million of the community's money that we are sitting on.
Right. And of course, with the M&O, it's hard to use fund balance to support salaries and benefits because that's always going to be a continued cost.
I agree. I think that a trend of continuing increase in revenue from new property extrapolated makes sense to base what we're going to do our COLAs on, not on what we're going to take out of fund balance. I agree.
Correct.
We have it, but I think it makes sense for us to have a basis of a cost of living increase on what our new revenue is every year trend-wise, as opposed to how much we're going to take out of fund balance.
Agreed.
Even though I do believe we have an excessive fund balance. So my suggestion would be, let's build this around 3%. Let's try to have a idea of letting growth pay for growth. And then that's what I'd like to see. And we can always come back and visit this if we decide we
Okay.
wanted to adjust it for one time with fund balance. We could use that. We could do that, correct?
We can.
Okay.
And this year we used about 10 million of fund balance to balance the
Yeah.
general fund.
And we're talking about, okay, to go from 3% to 6% would be a $2.2 million hit versus our $105 million unrestricted fund balance. Available, completely available fund balance, right?
Correct.
I'd like to target 3 and see if what we need to do from there.
Okay. Do I have any other suggestions?
So clarification for me. So it's a clarification for me. So I'm trying to understand. So one of the things that I'm learning is that Brazos County is growing. It's a me and Chuck thing. Brazos County is growing, and such that we want to be responsive to the growth of the county.
Okay.
We want to be fair to our employees that we are responsible for. And if I'm understanding, you're asking us, in order for you to be able to do your job and be responsive to those department heads that you're getting ready to meet with, is to say, we're starting out, so sort of back to what Commissioner Aldridge is saying, he is proposing a certain percentage. So if you start with that percentage and you're meeting with the department heads, but then we have to come back to adjust, how does that impact what you're trying to do as you go through that budget process? Because it's 3% now being proposed. We proposed 6% with no merit. How does that impact you being able to do what you need to do? 2 things. We want to be responsive to the new growth that is coming to Brazos County. You've already talked about that new positions are being proposed through the different departments. And so, I'm assuming each department will come to you talking about where they perceive that they need more support, even though there's not a complaint. How about with this 3% proposal and this 6% proposal, you're asking us to come up with a number that you can then sit down with the administrators, the department heads, for them to do their budget. And so these 2 different 3%, 6%.
So in the system, it will not automatically calculate because there's a lot of hand touching that we have to do when it comes to the COLA. it makes it easier for all the requests that have came in to sit there and state you received a cost of living on a lot of things, because we have a lot of step increases based on no merit award to this position prior years, or they're reclassifying because someone else next door makes more than them, they want to be like them, or they want to change your title from secretary to administrative assistant, or certain things. And so a lot of those things are based on additional increases. And so if a COLA is awarded, either 3% or 6%, if it's at the lower of the two, 3%, I put in the system, I discuss with the department heads, here's the cost of living, this is what your positions look like as of today. They go back and it's, happy-go-lucky, they explain it to their departments. A couple weeks later, on July 25th, we get our appraisals back, our estimates back, and we're able to increase it to a 4%. I'll put in the system, and it'll be proposed at 4%. The only thing is I need something to make it irrelevant so I can propose it that way. So it'd be great for an agenda item to go on for next Tuesday so it could be set in stone so the numbers don't continue to move. The one number that will continue to move is our operations, our supplies, or professional services. Every Tuesday, things are approved that are not budgeted that we have to include for next year. So we have to make sure that's included for next year. At least our positions staying still until proposed budget comes out regarding new positions. And it helps calculate how much those positions are going to cost as well. Because right now it's based on 24 rates, not the new 25 rates if there's a new COLA. It helps understand how much everything's going to increase and give you a better number. So when I present in August at the budget workshops, you'll have a true number, not based on 24 rates. And if the court does decide to award merit, that is a major, we have to have that before we even propose in the system.
You're asking us to do a proposal now so that you can plug it in and put it on the agenda
Correct.
for
We
next
not
week.
today, but I'll put it on the agenda next Tuesday. We have done it in the last couple of years because it's just how it was done. I would hate to change it that way because, like I said, this is a big portion of the budget. Once it's in there, it's still until we add new positions. When those new positions are presented, like I said, in August, it will give you a 2024, comparison between how much it's going to cost 2024 versus the new rate. Because I do not put those positions in the system until the day we propose.
I have a question for Jennifer. How difficult is it to recruit for county employees because of our salaries?
It's challenging. It is. We try to promote our benefits as much as we can because we do have some very unique benefits like the clinic, like longevity, which was recently increased, things like that. I'm sorry? Retirement is huge, as well in our recruitment. It is challenging though, particularly for our lower paid employees who will leave for a 25-cent per hour increase.
Yep.
I mean, we have personal experience in HR of people leaving for $5,000, $15,000 more a year. So yes, it happens.
There was a VG Young, I think 2 years ago, that